This is the Zijinshan East Station in Zibo, Shandong, which was built in 2009 but hasn't been opened since 2015. As you can see, the surrounding area is quite desolate. There's only a small village here, mostly cornfields, no roads, and hardly any cars. Nanjing Zijinshan East Station and Jiangpu Station, which netizens refer to as the two forgotten stations of Nanjing, are prime examples. They were built 14 years ago but have never been opened because Zijinshan East Station is only about 8 kilometers away from the operational Xianlin Station. The distance is too short. China's high-speed rail, often seen as a vanity project, has resulted in massive resource waste. Some even say that the money would be better spent encouraging childbirth, which would be more productive. There are over 500 high-speed rail stations across the country, with 26 of them left unfinished. This overly dense placement of stations could impact the efficiency of high-speed rail operations, such as increasing stop times and lowering average speeds. It might also negatively affect urban spatial layout, leading to fragmented regional development. Some say it could take another 5 to 10 years to build up sufficient passenger traffic. Is the timing simply not right? Recently, the Haitou high-speed rail station in Danzhou, Hainan, has become notorious for its connection to Evergrande's illegal buildings on Ocean Flower Island. Hainan's circular high-speed rail, the first of its kind globally, spans 625 kilometers and has 25 stations. Danzhou alone has 3 stations, Yintan, Baimajing, and Haitou. The first 2 are operational, but the Haikou station, with an investment of over 41 million yuan and a building area of nearly 2,000 square meters, has been completed for 8 years yet remains unused. When the Hainan High-Speed Rail West Line was officially opened on December 31, 2015, Haikou Station stayed closed due to an average daily passenger flow of less than 100 people. If opened, the station is expected to lose 5 million yuan annually, with Danzhou's already struggling finances having to cover the shortfall. In 2022, Danzhou's fiscal revenue was 6 billion yuan, so operating the station would undoubtedly make things worse. Looking across China, it is rare for an ordinary prefecture-level city with fewer than 1 million people to have 3 high-speed rail stations. If the 40 million yuan had been allocated to improving people's livelihoods, it could have addressed a significant number of issues. Meanwhile, Jinan, Shandong, has plans for a high-speed rail network with 18 stations. Can the local government afford it? Jinan, with a population of 5 million, has already built 12 high-speed rail stations and plans to add 6 more. The scale of the high-speed rail station planning is truly astonishing. In 2023, Jinan's general public budget revenue was 106 billion yuan, while its expenditure was 137 billion yuan, leading to a deficit. Obviously, if Jinan wants to build more high-speed rail stations, they will have to take on debt. The question is, how will they pay it back once they've borrowed the money? As of the first half of 2022, China's State Railway Group's debt had surpassed 6 trillion yuan. In May 2024, officials announced that the company had turned a profit in 2023. However, by the end of 2023, the group's asset-liability ratio was still as high as 66%, with annual interest expenses exceeding 200 billion yuan. The 3.3 billion yuan in profits wasn't even enough to cover a fraction of the interest. The company is currently still in a peak period of principal and interest repayments. How did this enormous debt accumulate? In 2019, Xinhua news outlets Outlook Weekly had already written about the risks of the high-speed rail's rapid expansion. First, it has significantly increased the risk of local government debt. The majority of funding for China's railway construction is raised by both central and local governments, with 35% coming from equity funding and 65% from debt financing. One of the main tactics regions use to compete for rail projects is by increasing their investment share, sometimes raising it to around 80%, with most of the funding relying on bank loans. In some areas, bank loans account for as much as 75% of the financing. Secondly, it has led to overcapacity. The entire railway industry chain is burdened with debt to varying degrees, and in order to alleviate this, companies compete by cutting prices. To lower costs, they must expand their operations, which ultimately results in overcapacity at every stage. Thirdly, there's a problem of diversification in business operations. Some railway companies, in an effort to reduce debt, have ventured into cross-industry activities. Leveraging their monopoly status, they act as both the buyer and seller, acquiring land to develop real estate, which further increases their debt burden. However, even more serious than these risks is that, aside from being in the peak period of principal and interest repayments, China's high-speed rail construction is also in the middle of a construction boom. Simply put, old debts remain unpaid while new ones are being added, a situation akin to drinking poison to quench thirst. Additionally, with the era of major high-speed rail repairs approaching, it's essentially a ticking time bomb of debt that will be passed down to future generations. In early 2019, Zhao Jian, a professor at the School of Economics and Management at Beijing Jiaotong University, wrote an article in Caixin highlighting that people often only see China's high-speed rail network as the largest in the world and appreciate the speed of the trains. However, they overlook the other side of the story. China also leads the world in high-speed rail debt and operational losses, not to mention the severe deterioration of the country's transportation structure. Zhao predicted that, given the financial condition of high-speed rail, it would one day become a gray rhino in China's financial system, a massive financial risk. In reality, the planning of high-speed rail networks must take into account various factors, including routes and station locations, as there is a limit to how many can be effectively built. The more stations there are, the higher the accessibility, or so it might seem. However, this could be an illusion. In the past, cities built numerous high-speed rail stations for several reasons. Number 1, to meet the public's travel needs, with each district wanting its own station to showcase achievements in public transportation infrastructure and address local demand. Number 2, to promote the development of new areas, substantially enhancing the commercial value of surrounding land, drawing businesses, developers, and residents to the vicinity. Number 3, to boost local investment performance, including roads and commercial developments, potentially driving infrastructure investment to new heights. However, this model begins to show its flaws when the real estate market slows down, urbanization decelerates, and local governments face financial constraints. With limited resources, local governments struggle to afford the construction, maintenance, and upkeep of so many supporting facilities. What used to be a pursuit of political achievements and rapid development has now led to a host of issues that are becoming more prevalent and harder to manage as time goes on. In contrast, Japan addressed the massive losses of its national railway by splitting and privatizing Japan National Railways in 1987, handing over operations to 7 companies under the JR Group. After privatization, Japan's railways shifted their focus towards profitability rather than adding more high-speed rail stations. Many unprofitable lines were discontinued, real estate development was revitalized by building malls, and stations were established in high-demand areas to manage real estate. Additionally, they raised ticket prices to improve profitability. To increase passenger traffic, private railway companies in Japan have gone to great lengths to improve service quality, gaining a strong reputation for safety and cleanliness. But in reality, railway operations aren't their main source of profit. They rely on real estate ventures and department stores to make money. So, having a large number of high-speed rail stations isn't necessarily better, especially when you consider economic factors. In China, the situation is different. As an authoritarian state, the government funds high-speed rail projects from the national treasury without considering the costs, and the public has no ability to monitor these expenditures. This free-spending approach, with power centralized, often leads to centralized corruption. Besides fulfilling transportation needs, China's massive investment in building high-speed rail stations is likely driven by 2 other main reasons. First, borrowing money to maintain appearances and using debt to cover more debt, all for political purposes such as preserving China's image. China's high-speed rail network is touted as the largest in the world. After the Beijing-Tianjin high-speed railway began operation in 2008, China officially entered a new era of high-speed rail travel, with trains running at speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Since then, high-speed rail construction has steadily expanded across various provinces. By the end of 2023, the total length of China's high-speed rail network exceeded 44,000 kilometers, making it the longest in the world. Of this, over 15,000 kilometers of track can operate at speeds of 300 kilometers per hour or higher, accounting for more than 2/3 of the global total. The network now covers all 31 provincial-level administrative regions, including Hong Kong. Multiple lines such as the Beijing-Tianjin Intercity Railway and the Beijing-Shanghai High-Speed Railway have achieved the world's fastest operating speed of 350 kilometers per hour. Construction continues, with the network expected to reach approximately 60,000 kilometers by 2025. When the high-speed rail projects were introduced, people were immersed in a sense of pride over China's speed and manufacturing capabilities. Local governments eagerly linked having a high-speed rail station with political achievements, driving an intense enthusiasm for investing in and building these stations. This has led to a recent surge in projects, such as the Yangtze River High-Speed Railway, where the number of stations far exceeds those planned in earlier, quote, for vertical and for horizontal high-speed rail projects. The focus has been on quantity, kilometers covered, and speeds, but not on efficiency or the long-term maintenance of these projects. According to statistics, only 6 high-speed rail lines in China are currently profitable. The Beijing-Shanghai High-Speed Railway, once dubbed the most profitable high-speed rail, saw passenger numbers drop by 67% in the first half of 2022, resulting in a loss of 1 billion yuan, which is approximately 140 million US dollars. Particularly notable is the Xiong'an new area, which is often seen as a showcase project for Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Its high-speed rail station was intended to become a future transportation hub, but now it sees very few passengers, leading to criticism that its construction was driven purely by political motives. Over the past few years, the development of Xiong'an new area has been sporadic, with frequent rumors of abandoned projects. The Xiong'an high-speed rail station, touted as the largest in Asia, was exposed in a video in January 2023, showing overgrown weeds outside the station. The Xiong'an high-speed rail station, once hailed as the largest in Asia, still looks impressive but remains largely empty. The station is 1.6 times the size of Beijing South Station, and netizens have previously mocked it as a space station due to its lack of passengers. The greenhouse-style roof design has been a major point of criticism, with complaints that it gets not only unbearably hot in the summer but also leaks water. During heavy rains, there are even reports of indoor rain. Xiong'an New Area is a national-level project heavily promoted by Xi Jinping, officially established on April 1, 2017. It has been described by officials as a millennium plan and a national priority. However, skepticism about the project has persisted, as Xiong'an is located inland with no strong economic foundation or appeals for economic development. Additionally, its proximity to Baiyangdian Lake makes Xiong'an vulnerable to flooding, as it sits in a low-lying area of North China. Xiong'an New Area was initially envisioned as a second capital, intended to relocate Beijing's administrative center there. However, the central government required Beijing's agencies and companies to bear the costs of relocation, which many enterprises were reluctant to do, as they saw it as a waste of resources to fulfill a political task. This led to the underutilization of the Xiong'an high-speed rail station. From May 10th to 12th, 2023, Xi Jinping visited Xiong'an New Area, declaring that his decision regarding Xiong'an was completely correct and stressing the need for patience and composure. During a meeting in Hebei, he personally urged central state-owned enterprises headquartered in Beijing and their subsidiaries to accelerate relocation efforts into the area, warning that they, quote, cannot act based on personal preferences. If they need to move, they must move, unquote. Local sources told Hong Kong media that despite the Xiong'an high-speed rail station having been in operation for over 2 years and with an investment of more than 30 billion yuan, it seemed that the station had yet to pass formal approval due to a lack of funding. A distinguished professor of the School of Business at the University of South Carolina Icahn, Xie Tian, has pointed out that railway investments in China are essentially joint ventures between the central and local governments, with all funding coming from government sources. He noted that these projects lack thorough feasibility studies and do not properly assess key factors such as passenger demand, income levels, and the actual needs of the people. Xie Tian remarked, quote, from the beginning, the design never truly considered market demand. It was essentially a top-down decision by the Chinese Communist Party, with everyone rushing into these planned projects. It was all about boosting China's GDP and enhancing the government's achievements, so even if resources were wasted, they didn't care. Many of China's high-speed rail lines face the same issue. They can't even afford the electricity bills, let alone repay the loans used for the investment, unquote. He further stated that China's high-speed rail network is a manifestation of the CCP's obsession with infrastructure, characterized by blind expansion and unchecked development. He said, quote, "In order to create the illusion of rapid economic growth in China, this infrastructure frenzy was undertaken for the sake of boosting GDP and deceiving the international investment community." These large-scale construction projects were built haphazardly, only to later realize that there was no real demand for them. Now, as the economy declines, ordinary people have even less money to travel by high-speed rail, unquote. Moreover, the high-speed rail infrastructure boom wasn't primarily about generating revenue, but rather about land development and speculation. Investing billions yet only receiving a few dozen passengers daily, with all surrounding real estate projects and commercial properties left abandoned. Do you know where this is? It is Xianlin Station in Shaanxi, one of the most unsuccessful high-speed rail investments. Next to the station are four unfinished buildings that have been abandoned for 10 years, including office towers, commercial apartments, and a hotel with no signs of resuming construction. The Chinese model of high-speed rail driving the real estate economy has collapsed. Some might argue that the original intention of building high-speed rail wasn't to make money from ticket sales, but rather to serve China's urbanization strategy. The main goal was to stimulate economic activity along the rail lines, increase property values in those areas, drive research, development, and manufacturing in high-end industries, create jobs, and promote the export of high-speed rail technology to support the Belt and Road Initiative. In fact, back in 2018, the Unbound Macroeconomic Research Center, a Chinese think tank, conducted a study highlighting that China's high-speed rail stations had become heavily real estatized. The construction of the entire high-speed rail system has been influenced by land economy concepts and local government performance goals. The risks associated with the high-speed rail plus real estate model were gradually beginning to surface. Between 2013 and 2017, China added 29,400 kilometers of new railway lines, including 15,700 kilometers of high-speed rail, marking the most concentrated and intense period of railway investment in the country's history. One of the associated risks was the high-speed rail plus city model, which combined high-speed rail construction with urbanization. By 2017, China had already built 516 high-speed rail stations, and it was not uncommon for a single city to have multiple stations. Most cities adopted the strategy of planning high-speed rail stations far from the old town centers to free up enough space for real estate development. Even the railway companies themselves ventured into real estate. The prevailing belief was that wherever there was a high-speed rail station, there would be people. And where there were people, there would be demand for housing and commercial properties. In reality, it was all about land speculation. However, many local governments deliberately overlooked a key fact. The primary function of high-speed rail stations is to transport passengers. Many high-speed rail stations serve as transportation hubs where passengers immediately transfer to subways or buses upon arrival, rarely lingering around the station. In local urban planning, the concept of dispersing passenger traffic through high-speed rail was significantly downplayed. Meanwhile, the potential high-speed rail stations to boost local land and housing prices was exaggerated and overemphasized. The result has been a proliferation of vacant malls, shops, hotels, and residences. In many cities, the overly ambitious expansion of new high-speed rail districts has saddled them with heavy debt burdens. Ultimately, the construction of high-speed rail has contributed to the real estate bubble, and now, with the economy stagnating, these massive debts continue to swell. History has shown that countries which attempt to use real estate as the driving force of their economy, or those that allow and encourage unchecked real estate development, rarely meet a good end. Even Japan, with a relatively strong industrial foundation, experienced a real estate bubble that caused the nation to stagnate for over 20 years, a situation from which it has yet to fully recover. Finally, let's look at the key factors that determine the overall planning and number of high-speed rail stations. Number 1. Traffic demand analysis. By analyzing historical data and future trends, it is essential to forecast the passenger flow in different regions. This ensures that the high-speed rail stations can meet the demands of daily commuting, business travel, and tourism. Number 2. Integration with transportation networks. Many high-speed rail stations should be seamlessly connected with other forms of urban transportation, such as subways, buses, and taxis, to provide a convenient and smooth travel experience for passengers. Number 3. Urban development planning. The layout of high-speed rail stations should align with the city's overall planning and development direction, promoting regional development and economic integration. Number 4. Fiscal capacity and operational efficiency. The construction and operation of high-speed rail stations requires substantial funding. Cities should plan the number and scale of stations based on their financial capabilities while also considering operational efficiency and economic benefits. 5. Environmental impact assessment. High-speed rail station planning must include environmental impact assessments to ensure that construction activities meet environmental protection standards, address noise issue, and minimize negative effects on the surrounding environment. Number 6. Policy alignment and support. The construction of high-speed rail stations should align with national and local government policy directives and be consistent with local development plans. It is uncertain whether China's rapid construction of over 500 high-speed rail stations fully accounted for all the above relevant factors.